with your worldview perspective, where do you see the landscape of cannabis changing as a whole over the next, let's say 10-ish years?
Ultimately, it's got to change in the United Nations. That's the biggest
Okay.
thing. The single treaty about drugs of 1961. That's got to change because everybody signed on to that, and the U.S. is still into it, and that's a big deal. And then, the United States as a nation must legalize it.
Let's hop right in. So I guess first things first, the first question I like to ask all of my guests is, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Jorge Cervantes. I live in Spain, and I've been writing cannabis books for the last 41 years, and publicly anyway. Was involved in the cannabis business long before that.
Right.
I mean, I've written more than 70 books, or no, not 70 years old, excuse me. I'm tired.
Okay.
I've written more than 50 books, actually, 50 books, yeah. And of course, that time. And my books are in print in 11 languages.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah.
So many know you by Jorge Cervantes. But some may know you by George F. Patton, and you
Van Patten.
Van Patten. You say you're a writer, a farmer, a grower. Which one of those would you say that you resonate with most?
Oh, a writer, much more so a writer than anything else. Yeah. Less, I mean, I do know a lot about Oh, here we go. Growing.
Yeah.
I put this over here and it disappears.
Yeah.
Here is the limoncello haze. I love hazes. They're actually wonderful. Yeah, because see how I got into this is I was in my primary or high school education. I grew up in America in Ontario, Oregon, and that's right next to Idaho, so it's pretty conservative, full of rednecks. And anyway, I worked at a newspaper office, so I was real familiar with printing.
Yep.
And knew how to print, and so and then I went to university in Mexico, and also in Spain here too. That's why I came back actually. But the deal is, right in the early 80s is when I started, 83 to be exact, or that's when my first book was published. I started actually doing the research a couple years before that. And so I nobody would publish my books, so or the first book I wrote, so I decided to print it myself and started a publishing company.
Yeah.
And that's what started everything, and I've maintained control of it ever since, and it's been a real good thing because I would have been out of business long ago.
Yeah, I could imagine that. So you said, kind of you resonate most with being a writer and stuff. Would you say that like when you were a lot younger, you like read a lot of books? Did you write in your spare time? How did the writing part I know you're known for the cultivation and the grow and stuff, but
actually, the deal is I know how to read and write quite well.
Right.
And a lot of people really lack that skill to write, and now we have artificial intelligence and very few people write anymore. But I was able to do that, and I could see this indoor growing was taken off. I'd already grown for several years in Southern California, and guerrilla grow and everything, and I mean, things were tough back then. Richard Nixon started the drug war on drugs. Yeah, it was pretty rough. But I was a guerrilla grower for some years outside of Santa Barbara, California. So I knew quite a bit about growing, actually a heck of a lot. And then everybody started growing indoors when I moved up to the Northwest. Because see, really, indoor growing started, it was Steve Murphy that started it at Indoor Sun Shop. And he's been in business, actually, 53 years now. In Seattle. Yeah. But Oregon, Washington, and BC, British Columbia, that's where it really started, right in that small little area. So I started there, and I could see that there was a lot of bad information, heck of a lot of bad information. And so I thought, well, gosh, can sort this out, because I have a hard time with people telling each other stories, and making money from it. It just didn't seem right to me. And we had a big hippie movement then, and I don't know, a lot of those values rubbed off on me. Participated pretty heavily.
So you have the origins of writing because you always liked it. Definitely have the two green thumbs, not just one green thumb. You got two green thumbs.
Green fingers, they call
green
them
fingers.
Yeah, dedos verdes. That's in Europe. Yeah, well, Latin world.
Yeah, no, for sure. I recall you saying in your documentary how I guess your first more serious exposure to cannabis was actually when you came back to Mexico, from Spain to Mexico in the middle of university and school. So is that kind of what got you from just writing to then doing the growing to then specifically cannabis cultivation? Is that kind of like where the origins began, where you tied all three of those things together?
Yeah. I mean, I'd gone to school in Spain before, and we just had Moroccan hash then, and nobody had any. That was the best dope you could get. And then in Mexico, see, the Mexicans, they keep the best cannabis for themselves.
Oh, they do?
Because all we could, of course, because I went to University of Americas there in Puebla, and gosh, I was there one day, and I bought my first kilo of it was Popo Blue, from the volcano. It's grown up on the volcano Popocatépetl, and there's Orizaba, Popo, and Ixta, the three volcanoes right around in that center on the Wak Valley. And these were grown up there, nice long buds. They were really nice. And they would call it blue, Popo Azul is what they call it. The reason it would turn, purple is because the elevation is so high. But we smoked a lot there, and I learned, I went to several farms and stuff, and, kind of got into it pretty heavy. Never really smuggled.
Really?
Yeah.
Not really.
Not really. You have to move loads. I mean, a little bit doesn't really count.
Sure.
But moving loads, no, I never really did that. A lot of friends did, and they had hard times. But went to prison, all that. Yeah, but I learned more about it there, and also about the sin semilla, because nobody knew anything about sin semilla back then. And I learned about that. We could get it. It was difficult to get, because they always want to put males with females and stuff. Kind of this Mexican thing. But so I learned quite a bit about it. And then when I got out of school, I didn't really have any other ambitions than to grow. So that's what I started doing, and I grew for several years, and then traveled for a few years, and then came back and started writing, because that's when the indoor stuff started. And at first time when I was moving loads up and down the coast, the West Coast, but just only in the United States. I didn't go across the international border.
Right.
And there, what happened was, the first halide light I saw was like a light bulb, sit in the ceiling. And then and they had plants planted in the ground. And there was probably 6 feet between them. And, it just didn't look like it was going to work very well. And then later in the Northwest, I learned a bit more about it, because, it was mainly bikers were doing it then. It's a lot had like the gypsy jokers, and I didn't really know any angels. I knew a bunch of angels up in BC and over outside of Quebec and Laval and stuff. But that's when it really started. Early 80s.
Early 80s. That's the time.
Yeah.
You also mentioned as well, that back when you had exposure to just all different types of varieties, and we can go into you spoke about the differences between strains and varieties, and I'd love to touch on that in a second, but how you had exposure to different varieties like African, Vietnamese, Mexican, and stuff like that. I guess my initial question is at the time, did you have a preference of geographically of where you got the best product from, and then has that shifted now? to like, what you currently like?
No, actually things are way different now than they used to be.
Right.
See, what happened is, okay, first there was, the guy that really put it all together was Neville Schoonmaker at the Seed Bank. And well, he lived in Cannabis Castle is what they call it now. The locals call it the big house by the dike. He had this, he's not with us anymore. He passed away, 4 years ago, I think. Yeah. But he's the one that got it all together because, see, the Netherlands was the only place you could go to have coffee shops. They had the first coffee shops in the world. Mellow Yellow was the first one. It was, Bernard Broning. He's the one that got credit for it. There was some before that, actually. But he's the one that got credit for it internationally. And he's still around, good friend, actually. Yeah, so Neville got it together with all the seeds and stuff, and everybody was moving there. Everybody that knew anything about seeds, there was this guy, Old Ed, there was, they call him in Jingles Dave Watson. And who else? Rob Clark was there. Actually, I think he's still there. I haven't seen him for a few years.
Right.
And everybody all of the genetics came to one place.
Sure.
And Neville managed to collect everything. I helped with quite a bit of that, actually. And anyway, so consequently what happened is it's kind of a center place where everything stayed.
Right.
And then it was disseminated from there. And that's one of the main breeders was skunk number 1, for example.
Right.
And then later Northern Lights came. I helped, not Northern Lights, but Big Bud, and there's a lot of plants based on Big Bud and stuff. So it keeps going. So anyway, that's how it started. And then after that, what happened was people would take these seeds and take them all over the world and mix them with other seeds, other landrace. And so there's not so many land races now as people claim.
Yeah.
There's only a few places where you can truly get them, because I've been to quite a few places in the world. Well, South America, Mexico, and all of Western Europe and Australia, really. But I haven't been to India or Morocco. And gosh, it's what's happened is the whole gene pool is all mixed up now. It's really quite mixed up. I mean, it's nice to be able to say that they're from one place, but they're mixed. Right. Even when you go to Colombia, it's like that, or Mexico as well. It's not straight on stuff like it used to be. Yeah, or even or India either. Yeah.
Do you see that as a good thing or a bad thing?
I see it, I don't know. It depends on how you look at it. You got to weigh things and see how you feel about it. What's happened is that the breeders, quote unquote breeders, have really done a pretty good job considering all they've had to work with.
Right.
They've bred for THC potency, and potency and weight have been the two main things that they bred for.
Yeah.
But as far as having, stable breeding lines, not many stable plants around at all. Not many at all. And for stability is really important when you want to do a big population. Because see, you can see this greenhouse behind me in Colombia. That's all bamboo and stuff. They cut from the selva, from the jungle they call it. Well, the selva is what they call it. But see, there's incredible inconsistency there. And that's because, these particular plants are seedlings grown from seed, but most of the plants there now are grown from clones in Colombia. Most of them are grown in Valle de Cauca, or a lot of them are, but still, see, you can grow 20 plants in Colombia now, and there's quite a few other places you can grow. A lot of Latin American places you can grow too.
Right. So with the, I guess, with the legalization of cannabis, coming, it's legal in Canada, federally illegal in the States and stuff like that. kind of as you pointed to, like a lot of this commercialization, like what they are growing for is the highest THC possible and the highest yield possible in terms of just amount they can extract from the plant. So, you have all of these books, that are essentially an art form of how to grow and how to do things, in specific ways and achieve specific goals and stuff like that. Are you seeing the art of cultivation slowly being lost with the commercialization of cannabis, or is it just this is just part of what the game is as of right now?
No, the cannabis is being grown. There's more cannabis being grown than ever before in the world.
Right.
And to me, that's a good thing. And there's and the information is really open about it. I was one of the first guys to provide good, clean information. There's a lot of, but there's way more information now, and people, that have doctorate degrees and biology. One of my good friends, and also a co-author on a book that I wrote, We Grow Cannabis, and that's in a couple of languages. Anyway, Dr. Gary Yates, he's got a degree in microbiology and also in the breeding as well, and so that's quite a big deal. And see, we never had people like that or be able to deal with people like that before. And the university programs in America, or the US, I should say, Canada is part of America as well, North America, and Canada is full of PhDs and really well-educated people, but they have the university system is totally into CBD cannabis, and they've done incredible things, and they're, testing is really inexpensive now to do all kinds of tests. It used to be a lot more expensive. So we're gonna see a lot of big changes, actually.
Yeah. So to take it back a little bit, your first video on YouTube that was uploaded was you evaluating the annual High Times top 3 winners for medical cannabis. And that was about 13 years ago. When I was doing my research, I was looking at the video and stuff like that. That was a little while ago, 2010.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Jorge's. I did things with High Times.
Yes, that's the one.
The first one was in BC. We shot it in right in BC, right in the city of Vancouver, and then around there. Yeah. Okay.
Right. So the video was uploaded in 2010. I'm not sure when you actually did it, but the first video you have on YouTube right now is that one. So how would you say that if you were to go and evaluate, like, let's say the winners of, let's say a 2024 competition, what would your evaluation of the different products be? Like, how would that have changed since all the way back when you first did your first evaluations? Like, what would you be looking for now that you might not necessarily be really thinking of back then? Or
I'd look for the same things, the criteria is still the same. That doesn't change. You first thing you do to make an evaluation is you set them all out, and you want to narrow things down, so you throw out as many as you can right at first, just from appearance or disease, insects, disease. Those two things are the first things to look for. And then the next thing to look for is how dry they are. If they were dried and cured properly, and that you can tell real quickly. And then after that, it's simple visual stuff, and then you can smell them. But see, the thing is, most people don't have that great. I don't have that great of a sense of smell, and most people don't actually. And it's there's only and also as far as taste goes too. It's really difficult to try three of them in a row, for example, and tell the difference, or tell big differences. It takes very few people can do that. The next thing I do is see how well it's grown. If it's grown to the maximum quality that it can be, expressing all of the genetics of the plant. And then after that, then you start looking at smell. First, we've got what they call here aspect of it, and that's the overall look of it, and that's what I explained to begin with. And then the smell, you look at that, and then you consider the taste after that. but the taste would be the last thing, actually, because usually most of them don't get through that. And then now we can also, that we really didn't have before, we can analyze them and see if there's any systemic chemicals in them. Because, oh gosh, the first year, I remember my friend from Pure Analytics in Santa Rosa, California, Samantha Miller. She tested all of the samples that came to the Golden Tarp Awards in Garberville.
Okay.
And more than half of the samples were disqualified because they had either they used a systemic chemical.
Right.
And that's one of the big problems. And so that's the one thing that I would look for now that we really weren't able to look for before, is the systemic chemicals. And people say, all the time, well, I don't use anything. Well, that's usually many times not true. Many times not true.
Yeah.
So I really believe in testing and stuff. Yeah.
So you have your general.
In fact,
go ahead.
In fact, one of those samples had aspergillus in it. Aspergillus is depends on if you have like sores in your lungs or if you've got a lung condition. It could be deadly. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So testing is really a good deal.
So you go through, the general filtration process of, I guess, the easiest things that you can, like you said, the site, what does it have on it, any insects, any form of, damage or anything like that. Then you go to kind of like fungi, you go to any of the smaller things. And then, so after you do all of that, what would you say a cultivator and a grower comes out with this, let's say, quote unquote, perfect product that fits all of the different criteria that you were speaking about, right? I think another problem with the scaling up portion is, okay, you can do it once on this one plant that you've taken care of all the time, but what happens when you kind of like scale that out to multiple plants over however many acres of land that you're trying to grow on or whatever it is, right? So in terms of like the maintenance and, of the plant and of the entire grow and stuff like that, what does that typically look like?
The maintenance, well, the more plants you have, the harder it is to take care of them.
Right.
Because there's just more work.
Yeah.
There's more things that can happen, and you've got to have a real good nurseryman or a manager.
All right.
You've got to have a very good manager. A good friend of mine, Jimmy the chef. He's down there. He's in south of Ventura, north of LA, kind of out toward the ocean. I forget the name of the town, but they used to film Zorro movies there.
Oh, nice. Antonio Banderas.
Disney. Way before that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, the Banderas, no. But it was before that, and it was the estate that they gave that Zorro had. But he grows there, and he's got about, I don't know, what is it, 40 acres US, yeah? And that's, and he's done a real good job. Everything's under plastic there, so they've got a place they can cover everything with plastic hoop houses, and then they can also cover it with shade cloth as well. So they can control the climate. That's really important, to be able to control the climate.
Right.
And he's got all kinds of things growing there, and it works really well. But he's got to stay right on top of everything. It's really quite a big job. Right. To be a good grower. In fact, a lot of those big companies especially in Canada, they had horrid looking cannabis, they really did, because they thought, oh, well, a bunch of old hippies grow this. But it's really, to do a good job of it, it's quite a bit more difficult than you'd think.
Yeah.
Because it hasn't been commercialized like, say, corn or wheat or sugar beets even, A lot of those things have been commercialized, and there's all kinds of really good harvesting machinery for those crops. And for cannabis, a lot of it has to be done by hand.
Why is that?
Well, when you look at the plant sticks up like this, and it's got branches that come off. You've got to take these branches off, take the individual flowers off, and then pare the flowers down or trim them down. Right. And then you've got to dry them evenly and stuff. So that's quite a bit more difficult than say harvesting corn or wheat, where you've got a hard grain there that you can separate easily. Yeah.
Makes sense. So I know, I don't want to go over time or anything like that. Just want to make sure I'm respectful of your time. I also want to say your recall of memory is fantastic, by the way. You've been name dropping company names, people's names of people that you met however many years ago. I wish I could do that.
Those are the ones I remember. There's a lot I don't.
Well, like, you've traveled the world, spoken to, it seems, hundreds of thousands of people. So, just a big fan of everything that you've been up to. So to very quickly close off, what would you say? You've seen a lot. You've been here pretty much since the beginning. And I recall you telling the story of when you purchased your first legal cannabis in Sebastopol, California. That was a really awesome story.
Yeah, peace and medicine. It was really weird. I broke all the rules when I did that.
Yeah.
You just, oh man, don't pay for anything. I paid for it with a business credit card. It was never audited for that. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
It was, that was a big experience for me. I still can't, it was a huge deal.
So now it's not so much of a big deal. It's happening all around the world and stuff like that. So with your worldview perspective, where do you see the landscape of cannabis changing as a whole over the next, let's say 10-ish years?
It's ultimately, it's got to change in the United Nations. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
The single treaty about drugs of 1961. That's got to change because everybody signed on to that. And the U.S. is still into it, and so that's got to change, and that's a big deal. And then, the United States as a nation must legalize it,
right?
Because Canada's done a good job of legalizing it nationally, and that's why all the money's up in Canada. That's why the Toronto Stock Exchange is so hot.
Right.
But once it's legalized in the United States and the United Nations, that's really key. Those two things. Right. So once that happens, everything's gonna change. There'll be a lot more money free, and then that's when the corporations will really move in.
Yeah. When the money talks, right?
Yeah, it'll be pretty rough for a lot of small growers.
Yeah.
There's a major shakeout going on right now in the marketplace.
So you recently released your free digital book.
This one. There we go. Here,
the Cannabis Encyclopedia. If you want to give it a little shout out.
Yeah, this one here. It's like, how many pages is it? I forget. It's like 600 pages. 600 pages, and it's in 11 languages. I translated it into 11 languages, all 5 European languages. Plus, we got it in Japanese, Ukrainian, and Russian, Czech. It's got it in quite a few 11 different ones. You can see it on my website, marijuanagrowing.com. Marijuana with a J, not a H or a G. Yeah. Marijuana. And then you can see more about me at jorge-cervantes.com. You see the whole history and lots of stuff, lots of blogs, all kinds of stuff. The sites, both of them are, pretty good sites, or actually they're quite good. And this one, it's, like I say, free online. You can get another one, We Grow Cannabis, and that I had 2 co-authors on that one, my partner, Stefan Meyer, and Dr. Gary Yates. And man, they just tighten things up. It's pretty nice. You
have some people on your team now. It's no longer you back in 1983 with your first book and nobody ever wanted to touch it with a 10-foot long pole. And now you got partners and, everyone able to help facilitate that. That's really awesome.
Yeah, it's a lot better than it was before.
Perfect. Well, Jorge, I just wanted to say thank you very much for hopping on the show. Love the expertise you were able to share with us. If there's anything else you want to share, where people want to find you, I know you plugged your website. If you have anything new coming up, feel free. This is your spotlight right now.
Yeah, well, I'm going to be doing a lot of things in the future, but until I get something in line. I also work with Seedsman right here, Seedsman, and I do blogs and all kinds of stuff. I'm at the fairs. I'll be at the Cannabis this year. Every year I'm there, and that's it, the one in Barcelona, not the one in Bilbao.
Well, fantastic. Yeah. Like I said, thank you very much for hopping on the show. Loved having you on. Until next time, thank you very much for listening, everyone. See you later. Bye.
Okay. Ciao, ciao.